Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here with Jason Blaha Strength and Fitness, and today I want to chat with you guys and gals a little bit about the advantages of full body training for drug-free lifters. But a quick reminder, if you guys will please click like and comment down below, I would appreciate it so much. And let's get over to this topic. This is something I said for decades. And it's something I promoted easily the first 6-7 years I was making video content. That probably was really the way to go. And I'll admit I've coached and used some other stuff in there, including body part splits, push-pull legs, a lot of conjugate stuff. But I think ultimately, in my experience, man, my clients even just do so well on full body, like my drug-free guys or my guys on just TRT. And I think we can classify those in the same category in terms of muscle protein synthesis. And I think people, they want to argue on that, but it's like, look, if someone is in the normal testosterone range, if we're talking about muscle protein synthesis specifically, we're not talking about fluctuations, their training responses are going to be pretty much identical to a drug-free lifter. Okay, so yes, the same rules apply to them for programming. Otherwise, I'm going to tell you, you're going to have a lot of problems. Like if you legitimately think, well, a lot of you guys are like, well, when I go on TRT one day, I'm going to train totally like a heavily enhanced lifter. Well, you're going to be in for a rude awakening. You're going to have to make gains, you're going to have to train the same way you train natural. Okay, let's just be realistic to really get good progress. All right, so that aside, because I'll let people argue that all they want. But let's get over and talk about this. So kind of what's happening with the full body, and I'm not saying it's the be all end all. I'm just going to throw the advantages. If we go off the variety of different data we have, muscles really only grow a couple days after you train them. Okay. Now, I've seen certain people argue that certain types of hypertrophy can extend up to 72 hours, so on, right? I mean, we've seen these discussions. So even then, you're looking at the most extreme cases that I'm aware of, maybe 72 hours, that a muscle will continue to grow. But most of that growth window is by around that 24-hour mark, okay? So if we're doing a full body 3-day-a-week routine, every muscle is going to get some stimulus, every 2 to 3 days. Let's say you do a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then you take the weekend off. Okay? So at most, the weekend off. So 3 days, 72 hours. So most of them are 48 hours apart. In terms of total muscle protein synthesis, you're probably getting a little bit better of an uptime, number one. And I think that's high on the list. Okay. Number two, you can recover easier. And I think, why does this matter? A lot of guys are like, but I can handle 4 or 5 days a week. Maybe, but then it interferes with your cardio and other stuff. So something I want to point out with a lot of guys who have busier lives and you want to be fit, because let's talk about, if you're staying natural, you probably do it because you want to be healthy. Like if anyone out there was really serious about gains and they didn't care about their health, they probably would cash in their natty card. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say the odds are, if you are choosing to stay natural, you probably care about your health. You're probably going to be active. You're probably going to have dedicated cardio sessions and things like that. Having these days off between lets you focus on these other things, lets you focus on cardio and stuff more. So we get a lot of recovery time in between. And I do think that that's an important consideration in this, because you're only lifting every 48 hours at the most. Okay, you get a full day off that you can either spend recovering, you could spend doing some cardio. I like to run on most of my off days these days. I go out and jog, go run. Okay? So people do these things, right? This is beneficial. But as far as the muscle protein synthesis, I think we could point out, people say, well, if volume is equal, but volume, it wouldn't be equal. There is some data, but these are not that good of studies either, that if volume is equal, that the frequency doesn't matter much, but then some studies show that it still does. And I think it comes back to that muscle protein synthesis. But here's what I'm about to hit. Is volume really going to be equal? In other words, squatting 3 days a week, let's say you do 3 sets of squats Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And if you're not a novice, that's actually pretty intense. That's pretty difficult. All right? So you're doing this squatting. Okay? You're going to be able to lift more than if you tried to do 9 sets of squats in one day. So your volumes are not going to be equal. Let's just be straight up. Let's assume you can do 275 for about, 5 to 8 reps. Just put it there, okay? Just throwing a number out. And I don't think that's unreasonable numbers for a lot of drug-free guys who are not super advanced yet. Your volumes are not going to be the same because you're able to do that for 3 sets. You're not doing it for 9. So even for the quads and glutes, you'd have to do more total work if you were to do all in one day or do it in 2 days. You're not hitting 3 sets of that 5 to 8 reps with that. You're not going to do 9 sets. Okay, number one. What about all the other secondary muscles? And I think this is a big consideration. When we train full body, we tend to do only big compounds. Yeah, let's say you come in and you squat 3 days a week. How many other muscles are growing besides just the quads and the glutes? A ton of them. Squats make a lot of stuff grow. Number two, the frequency is going to impact strength. So because you're going to be able to do similar lifts more frequently, you're going to get more practice. You're going to get better progressive overload because the neural drive is going to be better. Okay, you're training the same movement patterns a little more frequently. Even if you do an alternating A-B, still every 4 days, and you're hitting something very similar. A lot of guys are like, well, I do an incline instead of a flat every other workout. Okay, that's a very similar movement pattern. There's movement pattern carryover, right? See where we're going with all of that? But in terms of the volumes, they're not going to be equal. You're not going to replicate that same workload on a lower frequency that you're going to get by doing it 3 times a week with even just 2 to 3 sets. You're going to be able to squeeze the bigger exercises in more. Okay, so think about it. Let's assume a full body workout for you might be, I don't know, the squat, deadlift, a dip and a pull up, right? Dips and chin ups, and then maybe you do some laterals or something for your shoulders. And let's just say that's your 5 day a week. You do 3 sets of all those. Okay. Those 15 set workouts are a ton. And then think about how much more muscles you're working doing that than if you came in and did a split with more smaller stuff. There's a ton of overlap. Okay, so those volumes through all the different muscles of the body are absolutely not going to be the same as if you just did 9 or 10 sets for one muscle in a workout. Right? And I think we all get this. Oh, I do whatever for chest. Really, you can get the same chest and tricep you're going to get from 9 sets of weighted dips a week. Maybe, but then how about all the other secondary muscles? So I think the other thing it lends to is the fact that we're doing big exercises more frequently. We're getting a ton of spillover into other muscles that are being worked as secondary. And I think that's a big deal too for drug-free guys. Okay? So the volumes and things really are not equal. So the muscle protein synthesis is higher. The nervous system training for the movement patterns is higher. So better progressive overload. And then the nature of the training itself lends itself to huge overlap. And then more days we're usually free to just kind of rest or to do cardio. So there's a lot of advantages to it.